Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So, today I want to talk about a question that I asked and was asked, and I think is a good question that people need to think about. If you could go up and you could make a national law by literally walking up, snapping your fingers, signing the document, and walking away, what law would that be? I have thought about it quite a bit. I've asked around a bunch of friends and family, and I got 10 laws that I think should be made national. And some of them would take some time to put into effect, but overall, I think it would make society better as a whole. And if you disagree with me on any of these topics, I would love to debate with you, but I don't talk to trolls. I don't talk to people who name call or belittle. I like fact based statistics and things that can determine. And I love my mind being changed because that means I'm constantly learning. So, in any case, for law number one, and these aren't in any particular order of importance, it's just what I happen to have written down. This one has to do with food. So, we have the FDA that regulates food, but a lot of people are confused about dates and sell by dates. And a lot of people are confused about, we keep hearing things in the news on how we waste a ton of produce and vegetables and dairy products. And we are like, well, when I bring my food home from the grocery store, yeah, my milk might go bad for buying a little bit too much because I need more than half a gallon, but less than a gallon for my particular family size. But in any case, that's not nearly what they claim I'm throwing out, but they aren't thinking about all the produce and all of the vegetables and whatnot and the dairy products that are thrown away because they're not perfect. There's a whole sector out there of ugly fruits and vegetables, meaning that the fruit or vegetable isn't the perfect shade of red for the apple, the perfect roundness for that lemon. It's a little maybe dented from the way it grew in the ground, and it's not that it's a dent from being dropped, it's just a dent because there's a stick in the way, and so it's a ugly fruit or vegetable. And maybe the milk was there's just too much of it. It wasn't that it was bad milk, that there's anything wrong with it, but maybe they just produced too much of it and they can't sell it, so they have to throw it away. All that food and all that waste is not okay. So the solution is twofold on this. One of it being anything with the sell by date and anything with the expiration date. The expiration dates need to stay. We need to know about that. But the thing is that with the expiration dates, it needs to be made mandatory on food, and it's not right now. The only thing that expiration dates are mandatory on is baby formula in the United States. So if you see an expiration date, then that's basically this is a free will of the company, and kudos to that company that happens to be doing that. But then there's the sell by date. The sell by date is not the same thing as expiration date. They are guaranteeing that, say I get a loaf of bread and it says that it goes bad on this Thursday as the date, as the sell by date. Well, it doesn't go bad on that day when it strikes midnight. What ends up happening is the company that made that bread guarantees that when I take that bread home, based off of the size, the serving sizes and everything else, that bread is good for a certain number of days after that date when I bring it home from the grocery store. So if it says it's good for Thursday and for the sell by date, that loaf of bread is good for at least another 3 to 5 days, depending on how you store the bread. Of course, it's a lot less if you leave the bread open and let it go stale and whatnot. But in any case, so that's why we don't need to be seeing those dates. Those dates are only for the grocery store. So rule one of the food rule would be to get rid of sell by dates so that the consumer can actually read them. That's something that the grocery stores need to be able to read. Keep it in the code, but make it so the grocery stores see it and know what it is. And consumers don't necessarily have to deal with that. Also, when it comes to the food, they need every single grocery store. I don't care what grocery store it is. Every single grocery store needs to have an ugly section, meaning those fruits and vegetables that are the wrong size and everything else needs to be in this ugly section. It needs to be overabundant milk. That's nothing wrong with it. It just happens to be close to the sell by date, or it happens to be they have too much of it, or whatever the case may be. They sell it at a markup of anywhere from 70% off to 80% off. And if anything, they can make it so that those particular items that are the ugly items or whatnot, they can be sold to people who have food stamps at a huge discount rate, giving those people who need the food more food that's healthy food, because it's not processed foods that I'm talking about. These are usually the end cap aisles, or like the vegetable aisle and the dairy aisle and the meat aisle and whatnot. In any case, those items are hard or cost more money, and those people who need them the most, which are people on food stamps and can't afford them, can get the same items, same quality, just not necessarily the prettiness of it. So if all grocery stores do that, we would be saving so much money on food, and we would be giving the food to the people who need it. So that's the first law about food. The second law is going to be about taxes. Oh, everybody hates taxes. Taxes is an evil necessity. So one thing is that across the board, irregardless of how much money or little money you make, everybody gets a flat tax. Now, with saying this, anybody who makes below, and I'm just throwing a number out, $20,000 a year, and that's combined total income for household, then they don't have to pay taxes at all. They get all their money back. That's how it should be. We should be helping the poor succeed to move further, and not necessarily the rich. But I'm basically talking about a flat tax, and it should be something along the lines of, currently I'm paying, when I did my taxes this year, I'm paying close to 28% total of federal taxes. And that includes Social Security, state, the whole shebang when I filed my taxes. So I'm thinking something along the lines of the federal government gets a flat tax of like 18% of my income, just flat. Doesn't matter how much money I make. Doesn't matter how many write-offs I do. It's 18%. Now, that's 18% off if I do have write-offs and whatnot off that number. So say I'm just throwing nice round numbers out. Say I made $100,000, but I donated enough money and goods, and I donated $10,000. Well, I'm taxable $90,000 basically. So in any case, that's how it'd be taxed off that $90,000, not the $100,000, because of the donations and stuff that I made. And then we'd have each state would have to come up with their own number, and it could be anywhere from 2% to as high as 8-9%, depending on the state that you live in, and that'd be a flat tax. And basically that way, that's done. So another thing is that most people don't know this, but the IRS has the capability of doing our taxes for us. So we don't have to pay no third-person accountant to do our taxes and pay for the TurboTax if we do it by ourselves or whatever. So the IRS starts doing our taxes for us every year. They send us our taxes, we approve it, or we say, no, you forgot about this discount or this write-off that I have, because here's the proof for it. And it's corrected based off of, but that way we don't have to worry about all the nitty gritty. It's already done for us. And if it is something that they did not know about, then we send it to them. It's not a big deal. It's a lot less hassle on our part. That's what we're paying them for. And it's a lot less audits in the end, because if they're the ones doing it, then we have to catch it. And I'd rather catch a mistake than have to make a mistake. So another thing about taxes that I wanted to do, and now this would be a third law, would be the national budget. The national budget needs to be divided flatly. Now, within each of the subsections I'm about to name, they need to be, divvied out correctly, and it covers a couple of other things, like defense of the 100% of the money that the government gets for federal taxes. or state taxes, depending on which is which. And the state would determine their own individual, how much they break it down in percentage wise. Defense gets 20% nationwide. Now that would break down into the different branches, and then each branch would get a certain amount, and that can be divvied up individually, but that's what I'm talking about. You don't have to. It's 20% all defense for the United States. Another 20% would go towards welfare and social programs. That would be foster care programs. That would be people on HUD housing or Section 8 and low income, food stamps, anybody that has to do any type of social welfare to help low income or poor families and people who are disabled or mentally challenged or anything that they need some kind of help, either short term or long term. That's what that covers. 15% would go towards paying off our national debt, just a flat 15%. And I base that number because they claim that your household income, you should put 20% towards paying off your debts. Most people don't, but that's what they claim. So I'm actually making that lower for our national debt. Another 15% goes to education. And that would include adding education for the colleges. That would include all elementary educations, preschool educations, all education. And then the Social Security income, that needs to be stopped being used by the government. People are paying into that, and that's money that they have rightfully earned and that the government is holding for us for when we retire. And it's a mandatory tax that we have to pay, yet you guys are not paying us back the dollar that we put in. For every dollar that I'm putting in, I'm being told that by the time I am a senior citizen, I'm only going to get like 63% or 63 cents of that dollar back. That's not okay. I put in $1, I expect to get $1. Inflation should be helping it so that I get actually $1.10 back or $1.20 by the time I retire back. But that's not the way it's working. I'm actually getting less than I put in. And that's for anybody in this generation. If you were to retire today, then I believe it's for every dollar you put in when you were working in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you would only get about 85 cents to the dollar. I'm not exactly sure if that number is exactly correct, but that's about what it is right now. So that's not okay either, that our parents and our grandparents are having to do with less, even though they put in it, the money, because the government is greedy and decided to use the money in other places. So the next thing is that 10% needs to be on healthcare. Our healthcare system is pretty crappy. That's the nicest way of putting it. Another 10% needs to be put on transportation, roads, bridges, whatever. The transportation, public transportation, whatnot. 5% needs to go on to foreign aid. We need to help other countries if we can, and we have to help our own nation as well. And then 5% would be other funds, emergency funds, whatever we can classify as other. But that's the overall basic rundown of how I would do the national budget, so that every year we don't have to have the senators and the House and the president sign and close down the government or not. This is just too much of a mess. So next thing, rule number 4. The elected officials can only be in office for up to 10 years total. So if a senator or a House representative or a governor or a mayor, anybody, I don't care who they are, if they're elected and they are in a position of power working for the government to help society, then they cannot be in that position for more than 10 years. So if they have 2 4-year terms, they can't run a third, because that would push them into 12 years if they want. So that's what I mean. That, I think, it should be a rule nationwide. Rule number 5. So no one assigned a position in government can hold it for more than 3 months after the person who assigned them that position leaves. So I'm just throwing a thing out. The current sitting president assigns somebody as secretary of the House or whatever. and then that president leaves office in February. Well, the person who is Secretary of House that was assigned by that president that just left has 3 months to leave, and the new president coming in would assign somebody else to replace him. Now, they can be reassigned by the new president. The new president can say, okay, I like you, you can stay. And that's fine. But again, that role would have to roll into the 10-year period rule. And it would also allow for the new representation that we voted in to put in people that they feel suits best for the positions of cabinet that sit around them that we don't vote for, that they assign. Next thing. So this was rule number 6. Criminals are not seen by the courts until after sentencing. What do I mean by that? So our justice system tries to be fair, but we are not blind and we are not equal. Like meaning that if you look at statistics, if you are Black, if you are male, if you are a minority of any kind, not just African American or Black, then you are more likely for the exact same charge that somebody in the exact same position and circumstances would have be sentenced for a longer period of time than if you were a white male. Or actually white females have less time than white males. So actually any Caucasian would get less time for the exact same crime that an African American or Hispanic or anybody that's not white. So because of that, justice needs to be blind. People need to come into the court. They need to have some kind of garb. It would be basically a uniform. We have them already in orange jumpers. We basically have them wear gloves and a hat so that we don't know what their skin color is. They can still face the accusers and whatnot. But when it comes time to up to sentencing, nobody sees the person being accused until after the sentencing is done. Then, assuming they're an adult, they're not a minor, they would be allowed to show their face. Now, if they chose to show their face, that would be fine, but it's not going to be a mandatory. And I understand there's laws out there protecting witnesses, and the victims get to confront their accusers and things of that nature. But the problem is that, again, when race comes into, and it's not even that people are trying to be biased or the judges or the jury, it's the fact that it still does happen. And until that is completely gone, which will never be completely gone from what I can tell the way the world's going, then we need to do something to prevent it from happening. And I think that's a law that needs to be put into play. So rule number 7. Everyone gets a free education until they're associates in college, period. You get education. You can choose to go privately and pay for it, but everybody gets a free education in the United States. There's a lot of countries out there that are first world countries that are doing this already. We are behind in the times and we haven't, and that's not okay. That's all I have to say about that. It's going to be really hard, I believe, for people to prove me wrong on that one when it comes to statistics of other first world countries that have already started it and done it. So rule number 8, or law number 8, everyone must work a customer service job for a minimum number of hours. And this would be determined by the state, but I would think the minimum would be at least 80, if not more, but a minimum number of hours before they get their driver's license, before they get their gun registration card, before they get to own a pet. You can't stop child rearing, unfortunately, but before you do any of these things, when it requires you getting a license for it of some form, you have to do these hours working. You are paid. We have to prove that you've been paid by showing your pay stub shows the hours on it and whatnot. So what ends up happening is people who don't work customer service jobs, they don't get to see the true side of humanity and the good, the bad, and the goods, all sides of people. People tend to, when they believe they're being shortchanged in some form or another, tend to show their not so nice side, and they may come off as the best person in the world, in every other scenario, but Lord help them if they don't get those pickles when they said no pickles and they have a pickle on their sandwich. Oh, they just lose their mind over stupid stuff like that. It's not like you can't take the damn pickle off. I'm sorry. It's not like it's mayonnaise or whatever. But in any case, that's a whole nother tangent. But that would be law number 8. Law number 9 and law number 10 are very similar, but law number 9 was no more plastic. Yep, that's pretty much it. Anything that does require plastic, hospital gear, some products for food, not all, some, then there is a tax on that plastic. If the plastic is not reusable, then all plastic needs to start being thrown away as just a plastic waste, not just recyclable. Recycling does not do all plastic. They only do some plastics. So there's different numbers. There's a little triangle. There's a number inside of it. And there's different triangles. They take different types of plastic, and they only recycle only 1 or 2 of the numbers. I'm not exactly even sure which ones. But in any case, anything made of plastic, all plastics need to be recyclable. That's basically it. Of course, medical waste is something that we would have to contend with, and we would have to figure that out, but that's a necessity. Other than that, that's the only necessity I can think of that requires plastic is medical wise. Now, as for the 10th rule, yay, Tim, trash must be separated. This is what I was saying. We need to have a better system for our trash. We need to have, instead of having just trash and recycling, some places have a yard waste bin or natural compost bins that they take. We need to have, everybody in the country needs to have it so that there are compost or natural food waste bins. So it'd be plant matter, it would be vegetables, waste. It would be anything that is food based. So if you didn't finish that bowl of soup, that would go in there. That would be one trash. Another trash would be only plastic goods. Another trash would be anything metal that can be recycled. Another trash would be anything glass that would also be recycled. Another bin would be anything made of paper that would be recycled as well. And then the last one would be other items that are in a other category. So that would leave us 5 trash cans, and that would bring down our waste, so long as it was properly disposed of, to darn near close to 0. There's no reason we can't burn the paper waste and use that as energy instead of using coal. We produce enough paper waste, cardboard and things of that nature, that there's no reason we can't use that as energy versus coal. The emissions is about the same. It's not going to affect the output of, waste when it comes to pollution and whatnot. So those are my 10 rules. I know this ended up being a pretty long video. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate everyone's input. And if you have any other suggestions or something I may have forgot about, I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching. Bye. Have a great day.